Hello and welcome to the Vasa Museum. The museum is actually closed for visitors, but we try to reach out to you this way through our worldwide Vasa broadcast every weekday at 16:28. My name is Lisa and normally you can find me here in the museum gift shop. But I also do guided tours in Swedish, German and in English. Now we are standing in a copy of one of the rooms that has been found on board the ship. And above me, we have 7 sculptures. These 7 sculptures show young boys. They are all playing their own instrument. And today's topic will be about this orchestra. And now feel free to have a guess. What instruments do you believe that they are playing? Do you maybe recognize any instrument? Feel free to have a guess and leave it in the comments section below. So, the Vasa was a warship. Why would we even have this type of orchestra on a ship like this? Well, these young boys were also called puttis, from the Italian word, and putti orchestras like this were very popular in the 17th century, not just in Sweden but in Europe. We can find them in churches, for instance, and on the outside of ships as well. But here we have one from the inside of Vasa that has been preserved. And the room in which they were situated was this room that is called the steerage. You might notice that there is a big stick here in the middle of the room. That's how they steer the ship, by moving this stick from side to side. So this room, the steerage, it was a workplace for the person steering the ship. But as you might have noticed, the orchestra is not in front of that person. No, it is behind him. Why would they put such lovely sculptures behind that person? Well, this room was not just a workspace. It was also a waiting room, we could say, for people who came to visit the most important person on the ship, the king himself. They would come from the weather deck, head down a flight of stairs, and then maybe wait here, outside of this door, until the king was ready to receive them. And here you were reminded of who you were actually meeting. Right above this door, we have a crown. And above the door further up is where the orchestra is situated. Music was very much present at court in the 17th century. Gustav Adolf II, the king who commissioned this ship, he was very interested in music himself. When he married his wife, Maria Eleonora from Brandenburg in 1620, he invited a lot of German musicians to join her from Germany to Sweden. And then they remained in the Swedish Royal Orchestra, who played at court. And we have a document, a contract with one of those musicians. And that contract states that he should be available to the king's disposal to play in church, at court, at the table, at land and sea, day and night. So music was very important. Okay, so what about these 7 instruments? Have we received any guesses, perhaps?
We have the violin and we have the lute.
We have received some guesses, the violin and the lute. Thank you for your guesses. Let's see what we have here. So we'll start furthest away from me. There we have the bagpipes. And now you might be thinking, the bagpipes, aren't those associated more with Scotland? And yes, maybe they are, but the bagpipes have been played in Sweden since the Middle Ages. It's actually still a little bit weird that we have them here, because they were not played at court in Sweden. They were more of a folksy instrument, played by ordinary people. Next to the bagpipes is another instrument that's also a wind instrument. That instrument looks a little bit like a recorder, perhaps, and it's actually a zinc. or it can be called cornet or cornetto, spelled with 2 T's. And that's a mix between a trumpet and a recorder. Next to the cornetto, we have 2 string instruments, a string instrument that was played with a bow. And these 2 are very interesting because we're not quite sure exactly what instruments they were, or rather we have different theories. There were 2 types of bow instruments that could look like this. It was viola da gamba. Gamba came from Italian and meant leg. You played it supported on your leg or between the knees. And we have viola da braccia. Braccia came from Italian and meant arm. You played it by supporting it on your arm. And it's actually hard to tell if maybe one of them viola da gamba and the other one viola da braccia, or are they belonging to the same family? The way that they are played indicate one thing, that they are from viola da gamba family, but the way that they are shaped indicate that maybe they are from viola da braccia. Well, we can't really be sure. And the thing is, the person who made these, the sculptor, he was probably not a musician himself, so maybe he was also not really familiar with the differences. The next 2 instruments, however, are quite easy to detect. This first one was the lute, and we don't know for sure that Gustav Adolf played any instrument, but it's said that maybe he played the lute. Next one is the cittern. And from where you are standing, these 2 are pretty identical, but they look a little bit different in the back, and the cittern was considered a bit easier to play. Now, for the final instrument, we have a harp. And these concludes our 7 instruments of the Putti Orchestra. And yes, so we have been talking now that music was very important in the 17th century, and we have almost reached the end of this broadcast. But I'd like to finish with giving you a tip or something that you could do now. Because my guess is that maybe some of you are stuck at home, more or less stuck. You're not allowed to move around as you used to. And let me tell you something, what you could do if you were in a similar situation in the 17th or in the 16th century. The uncle of Gustav Adolf, he was called Erik the 14th, and he had actually been king of Sweden. But he was dethroned by no other than his own brother. And he was sentenced to jail, we could say. He was locked up. He was not allowed any instruments, of course not. And at one time he was actually not even allowed ink in his cell. But this did not stop Erik. Oh no, he decided that music was so important to him that he found a piece of parchment and he found a piece of coal. And since he was a real Renaissance prince, he had been brought up to know about how to compose music. So that's how he spent his days locked up inside, by composing music using just a lump of coal. Maybe you can try that. If you feel like coal's not really your thing, have a look. Maybe you find an instrument at home, or maybe you can sing a few tunes. It worked for Erik. Maybe it will work for you too. Okay, before I go, this was the Worldwide Vasa 1628. We broadcast every weekday. And tomorrow you will actually have the chance to listen to German when my colleague will tell you more about the ship in German. But now we have been waiting in here for long enough. And I have been waiting patiently outside this cabin. So let's see if the king is now ready to invite me into the great cabin. Lovely, thank you, Your Majesty. What a lovely Putti Orchestra you have.